council treasurer, I'll go ahead and stagger the meeting because our mayor pro tem and our council president is here. Okay? So, please rise and join me with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of council, please.
Councilmember Gardner?
Here.
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Councilmember Olivera?
Here.
Councilmember Putnam is absent. Councilmember Steiger?
Here.
Councilmember Walker is here.
Okay, so are there any additions or changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, I'd like to add a couple of things, please.
Okay. And
I'd like to add City Hall renovation budget and leave policies, short-term, long-term, and donated leave.
Okay. Anything else? Councilmember Case?
I'd like to have a short discussion on waste management contract.
So it's on the agenda. I mean, as far as having the mayor or the city
Second
attorney
item.
review it.
When I looked at it, I didn't see it.
It's the second item on the agenda.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Okay. Okay. Any other additions to tonight's agenda? Did you have anything?
No, but that was two things for Clint, or was it all under one?
Those are two different things.
Okay.
And I'm a little concerned about one item because staff isn't here to discuss it, but you can at least make a question on that. Okay, so moving on. First item on the agenda is marijuana regulation ordinance review. So we have Jack and our city attorney here.
Let the record show Mr. Walker has arrived.
Just throw it on the ground, it'll pop here.
You got it? You can move that there if you want.
I'm sure there's something here, right?
Sitting down, fine, he's not here tonight.
So the lens was closed on that.
Oh, yeah, the lens will have to. Can everybody see it, or? As sharp as that's going to be. Mayor, council members, tonight, what I'm going to do, the purpose for tonight's meeting really is to get the council back up to speed on the marijuana regulations that have been considered by the planning commission and also by the council over the previous months, or I should say over the previous year. Just by a little bit of background, what we have is there are interim zoning regulations that are in effect now. They were approved by council roughly 6 months ago, and those interim zoning regulations will be expiring on January 28th of this month. So therefore, the council will be needing to look at one of two actions: either adopting regulations regulating marijuana, or which include both medical and recreational sales, or extending the interim zoning ordinance. In the past, the Planning Commission, they had reviewed these regulations. They had at least 12 meetings reviewing these regulations, and of course, the council has had at least 7 meetings in looking at the proposed regulations. The Planning Commission recommended approval of a couple different ordinances, or 3 different ordinances at their August 26th meeting, and then the council reviewed those at their meeting in September. And at that meeting, the council requested a couple additional ordinances to be put together to be somewhat different than what the ordinances were in effect that's being recommended by the council. The matrix that you have up here shows the different ordinances that it would be under consideration for the meeting on the 20th. The top one is Ordinance 2014-1876, and this is the ordinance that if the council has decided to go with this ordinance, would allow recreational sales of marijuana, which includes producers, processors, and retail sales conditionally within the city. If the council did not go with that one, the next ordinance is 1872. That deals with medical marijuana, and that would prohibit the sale of medical marijuana in collective gardens. Ordinance 2014-1877. This one adopts business licenses for procedures for the retail sales. Ordinance 2014-1878 would prohibit both medical marijuana and also recreational sales of marijuana. Now, at the September meeting, the council requested that two additional ordinances be considered, be brought forward to council. This ordinance 2015-1888 would just allow processors and producers in the light industrial zone, and then but would not allow any retail marijuana sales, recreational sales. Ordinance 2015-1889 would not allow any producers or processors, but would allow recreational sales in the commercial zone. And an ordinance yet given a number, should it be needed, is an extension of the interim zoning regulations. So this is in a nutshell what the different ordinances would do should any one of these ones be adopted by council. The next slide provides a summary of the actions that the council would have to take dependent on which action the council would take on with any one of these different ordinances. As I said, the Planning Commission at their August 26th meeting, they made recommendations on 3 of the 4 ordinances that were brought before them. The first one dealing with the recreational sale of producers, processors, and recreational sales conditionally within the light industrial or commercial zone, that the Planning Commission recommended approval. In this case, if the council decided to go with the recommendation of the Planning Commission, there would be no public hearing required. Go ahead and approve it. But if the council does not agree with that particular ordinance and that recommendation, then a public hearing would be required for adopting a different type of ordinance. The Planning Commission had recommended not to adopt 1872, which would prohibit marijuana dispensaries and collective gardens. If the council does not agree with that recommendation, again, there would have to be a public hearing. The ordinance 1877, they recommended approval, and those are the business licenses. And that doesn't necessarily allow marijuana use, it just sets up the procedures to license them if the council determines that they want to allow marijuana businesses within the city. Then the 2 new ordinances, well, Ordinance 1878 they did not make, the planning commission did not make a recommendation, and if the council deems they want to adopt that particular ordinance, again, a public hearing is required. Ordinance, the two new ordinances, 1888 and 1889, which I mentioned earlier, if the council were looking to adopt either one of those, again, a public hearing is required, or if the interim zoning code, zoning regulations regarding marijuana is readopted and extended, that would require a public hearing. So that's in a nutshell the different actions that could be taken depending on which council action the council would want to take after public testimony. Well, after public testimony, if the council decides not to go with the planning commission's recommendations. So what we're looking here tonight is what we like to do as staff. We would like to get some direction from council in what direction to go for the January 20th meeting. We're not going to hold a public hearing tonight, and we can't discuss it publicly, but we kind of want to get some direction. The agenda bill that was provided some options as to the motions that could be made in terms of these different ordinances, and there's 5 options. The first one is just go with all the planning commission recommendations. The second option would be to not adopt the planning commission's recommendations for the most part and hold a public hearing. And then there's a number of permutations of those two first options. So what we're looking for is get some direction on how staff should proceed for the January 20th meeting. Other questions?
So, and Carol, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not unless the council has questions.
Okay. So, questions from council? Member Page?
So it was my understanding that if we chose not to allow a legal business to operate, we had to have sound justification why not to. Have we, has CEPA been done to determine what the impacts are?
The CEPA will be complete on January 16th. So all the environmental review, unless there is an appeal to CEPA determination, environmental review will be done at exactly 5 p.m. on the 16th of January.
So, Carol, did you have any additional comments on his question regarding sound reasons for not authorizing? Or there was some question about could put the city at risk unless we had sound reasons for not allowing.
Well, we can't talk about liability to the city in open session, but when you decide on any of these ordinance options, we will be adopting findings and conclusions to support your decision. Each of the ordinances that are in your packet have whereas sections that will be our findings and conclusions. They will be supplemented after the public hearing. So if you decide you want to have a public hearing because you're not going to go with the planning commission recommendation, then we'll add more whereas sections based upon the testimony that's received at the public hearing. If you decide you just want to go ahead with the ordinances that were recommended by the planning commission, the findings and conclusions are pretty much what you see there, unless you want to add some more. Okay, all right.
Councilmember Walker?
I know originally your recommendation for medical was to ban it based on lack of regulation at the state level.
Right.
With changes in the direction the federal government's going, does your recommendation still stand?
Yes, it does, because there still are no regulations at the state level to address medical marijuana. So we're still going to have the adverse impacts related to medical marijuana. You know, recreational marijuana has a strict regulatory system that's been put in place by the Department of Liquor. Just went out of my head. So they already have that in place, but there's nothing with regard to medical marijuana. So we don't have any way of regulating that at a local level. I don't know that you have funds to be able to do what the state is doing with recreational marijuana, so my recommendation still stands.
other questions?
So I guess now what we need is direction to staff on which ordinances to bring forward for the public hearing. So any recommendations from council?
I would recommend forwarding the planning commission to option one.
On the option, I didn't see any here, but there's 100 pages of stuff to scroll through. Is the option 1, 2, 3 listed out again?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's right at the beginning of the
Page
packet.
4 for the packet.
Councilmember Staggers.
Well, I think much just went on, and what I've heard from the state level is that any money that's been, revenue has been generated from marijuana has all gone towards administrative expenses and everything. It's just a total fiasco. And us as a small city, we have no business, we have no getting involved in it because we do not have the proper personnel to police the issue. And another thing came up as far as the water needs and everything. So I would say we go with 1878 and just prohibit everything.
1878, 1888, 1889.
No, 78, that's
Oh, I can't spell.
President Paul, yeah.
Can I make a comment here? Do you mind if I?
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that all we're doing tonight is just picking what ordinances are going to be forwarded to the next council meeting. And the reason we have to pick them is because the Planning Commission's recommendation has already been sort of vetted by the public. There's been public testimony on it. And if the council decides to do something different, then you have to have additional public comment. So tonight, you don't want to make a whole bunch of comments about or decisions on what ordinance to actually adopt. We're just trying to figure out what ordinances you want to have forwarded to the next meeting. You may end up saying things that won't end up in the record at the next hearing, which is my concern. That we really have to make sure you have enough information in your findings and conclusions at the next meeting.
I don't support extending the interim zoning ordinance. I think we need to make a decision one way or the other. So I don't recommend forwarding that one. That was option 5.
So could you speak to that, Carol?
I just want to tell you that tonight I found out for the first time that it looks like our timing, given the notice and the fact that there was a holiday, may require that we extend it even just for a couple of weeks. Given that that's your next meeting, if you adopt an ordinance, you know, it doesn't go into effect for 5 days until after publication, and we don't want to adopt an ordinance like this on an emergency basis.
Okay.
So we may have that ordinance in front of you at the next meeting, but only for a limited time.
I guess we'll forward option 5.
John's recommendation was to adopt, option 2 is the closest. What he was supporting, sounds like option 2 is Clint's recommendation as well.
So is that a consensus from council to forward option 2, which would be, and I don't know, the public probably doesn't even have all of this, right?
Nope.
So all these different things. So option 2 is stated, do not adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding ordinance number 2014-1876, conditionally allowing producing, processing, and recreational sales of marijuana. Do not adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation and adopt ordinance 2013-72, which will prohibit medical marijuana dispensaries and collective gardens attachments. Option 3, adopt ordinance 2014-1878, at the January, well, I don't think we're doing it at the January 20th meeting, which prohibits both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, including producers and processors, and the fourth is adopt planning commission's recommendation, adopt ordinance 2014-1877 related to licensing procedures for recreational marijuana. So are these the ordinances that they want, that council is saying they want brought forward?
I mean, really, I don't.
Well, and Jack tried to do everything that he could to lay out exactly what's been put out there and put in the
Essentially,
matrix in your book.
If I may, option one is what, the planning commission recommended to us back in September. Option two basically says we don't want marijuana in our town. Option three, I think, created a, it allows the producers and processors, but no sales
And no medical, right?
and no medical. And then option four,
Is the reverse of that.
okay, it allows commercial retail sales, but no production and processing.
And no
Okay,
medical.
I was confused as to why we
And
need
then-
two business licenses.
And then if, it sounds like if we're gonna adopt anything, option five still needs to be considered. So we
Correct.
should forward option five anyway. So my recommendation now is to forward option five. I think we should all be able to agree on that. That would be extending the interim zoning ordinance if we need to.
So, move option 5 forward.
I agree.
Well, yeah, we need.
Just to cover that gap, it's just to
Yeah.
cover that gap, with
So-
application.
Option five is forward. Now it's just to decide on whether to do option 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Council's pleasure on this.
I support option 1.
I don't.
Further comments from council?
I agree with, I think Clint and John with option 2, but I could also see option 3.
I'm so confused that they're not to adopt.
Look at the results, go past that and just look at the results. So, so option 2 would allow processing, producing for recreational sales, and, so option 2, hold on. That confused me.
It doesn't allow anything.
Let's do that.
Option 2 doesn't allow anything, sorry.
Right, okay, option 2 says no to everything.
So, Councilmember Garvey, do you have a question?
Right now, I'm gonna have to agree with both of those, the option 2. I don't think the city of Pacific is ready for this, and.
So we would just like consider the options that you
We're
want to
just
bring forward.
considering,
Option, yeah, I would consider option 2.
Excellent. So further comments?
I think you have, at this point right now, have the ones that I feel should be brought forward to consider.
So I feel like there's a majority of council that would like to bring option 2 forward, those ordinances. Carol, will you?
Well, someone
I
can
know.
make a motion.
Well, then we don't really vote on
Workshop.
anything, it's just what we're gonna move forward.
I mean, it sounds like we're in agreement that option 4 is not something, since nobody's mentioned option 4.
Option 4 is not an option.
We can take it off the table.
What's the number of option 4?
Option 4 is allowing recreational, not allowing production and processing, and not allowing medical.
But 1888, 1887, which?
70, not adopting the planning commission, or not accepting the planning commissions for 1876. Adopt 1889. Do not adopt their recommendation for 1872. And then the adopting 1877, which is all licensing.
So that's option 3.
That's option 4.
If it's too confusing with the options, just tell us what you want.
What
to
we're
be
doing, what
in
we want brought
And then
forward.
we'll figure out whatever it is, and we'll bring it back to you in whatever form it needs to be brought. Just tell us what you want.
I'm still considering whether allowing the processing and production I don't want medical marijuana, and I want the license fee.
Well, maybe we should do it that
So
way.
Maybe
we should do it that way. Let's start with recreational marijuana. Is there anybody who thinks we should adopt something that allows recreational marijuana? Medical marijuana. Who thinks we should allow medical? Nobody. Okay, so we want to bring back an ordinance that prohibits medical marijuana, right? Okay.
Under its, current conditions.
And you can amend the ordinance, you can repeal it at any time, you know, so. Okay, so, now with regard to recreational marijuana, who wants to totally prohibit recreational marijuana?
Me.
I think John did too.
Yes, John did too.
Yeah, his
Here's
option
John's-
two is his closest support, was his
John's
closest.
desire.
Okay, so we bring back an ordinance that prohibits recreational marijuana. Okay, well, if you've read that, that's what it says. Okay, and, then with regard to allowing recreational marijuana, who wants to allow it in the, L1 zone for producers and processors only?
I'm something to
Okay, so that.
I'm trying to find out about the water.
Well, that's what this is.
Yeah,
Is there,
there's still stuff going on.
yeah, is it? Difference between tomatoes and pot and water consumption. No, I use a lot of water in my tomatoes.
Okay, is there any other option anybody else wants to see come back?
So it sounds like since we're considering options for allowing, then wasn't there one that just prohibited all?
Well, we're gonna have them in separate ordinances to prohibit medical and to prohibit recreational, just in case one of them is appealed.
Right.
Then one of them, let's say the recreational one is appealed and the medical one is not. Then
So
we have one.
recreational sales.
Well, I'm just talking now about total prohibition.
Oh,
Make sure I understand what you're saying. You want me to bring back an ordinance, or us to bring back an ordinance that totally prohibits recreational marijuana in any form as an option. You want us to bring back an ordinance that totally prohibits medical marijuana in any form as an option. You want us to bring back an ordinance that is 1888, which prohibits prohibits recreational marijuana sales, but conditionally allows producers and processors in the L1 zone. Is there any other ordinance you want to see?
I'm okay with 1876. Having conditional use permits, which would include, producing, processing, and sales. I don't see a difference from someone driving a mile and getting it, bringing it back to town.
Okay,
Buying it.
so 1876, he brought feedback as well?
So that looks like 5 different ordinances.
Yeah, plus the,
Plus
extension
the
of the interim.
extension, yeah.
So is that it then?
So I know we can't vote, do we want to get consensus from 2 or 3 council members before we move forward? Because it sounds like there's a couple that only support some of these.
Well, it sounds like it's split on some of those, and it's just gonna have to go after a public hearing and then go to a vote.
What I'm trying to do is eliminate the ordinances that you absolutely positively don't want to see again.
is there anybody that's for recreational sales? That's it.
Okay, but that's in one of the ordinances,
Right.
so, but, I mean, you don't have to eliminate it at this point. But you could, if there's an ordinance up there that you absolutely positively don't like, and there's absolutely no one who's gonna vote for it, tell us now, we can eliminate it.
It sounds like 1888 out, right?
I thought that was one that you thought would be okay.
Oh, no, sorry, there's the number for that.
Right.
Oh,
Yes, 1888.
so 1888, 89 is out.
Because Vic, you're for all, right?
For all, but you said you were for getting rid of sales, but
Yeah,
allowing
so that's-
producers,
That's 88.
okay.
Then 72, we all
89, I
said
think, is
no.
off the table.
Yeah, 89 is off the table.
And 72.
No, 72 is still up. Because that's the standalone for medical.
Prohibits prohibition, yeah. And the business license can come back to you later, if that's too confusing. Because that's only something that you want to see if you allow it.
So we'll want those ready to go in case the vote goes that way.
It doesn't need a public hearing, so that's fine.
We just need to have these ordinances ready so that we have them put forth in the public hearing, so we can know what's going to be spoke on at the public hearing.
Okay, so is that it then? 1876, 1888, total prohibition on recreational marijuana, total prohibition on medical marijuana. Those are the ordinances that are going to come back to you. Okay? Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember.
I may have lost something, that is also grow operation.
That's the,
That's producers.
that's the producers.
Okay.
That's included in these options.
Sorry.
Okay. Any further questions from council?